All right. So ready to dive into this fascinating world of corporate entrepreneurship. You've given us some really interesting research to work with here, and yeah, I'm eager to unpack it all with you.
I'm excited to dig in as well.
Okay, so we got two key papers that we're going to be talking about today. The first is Creating Corporate Entrepreneurship. It's from 1994 by Stopford and Baden-Fuller, and they took a close look at 10 European companies across 4 different industries and really got into the weeds of how these companies managed to turn themselves around, going from struggling businesses to industry leaders.
What's great about this study is they didn't just focus on the what, they really dug into the how. You know, how did these companies actually change their behavior and their strategy to become more innovative?
Right.
What were the specific actions that they took?
Exactly. And then we've got the relationship between corporate entrepreneurship and strategic management.
Okay.
This one's from 1999 by Behringer and Bludorn, and they went broad, surveying nearly 170 U.S. manufacturing firms
Wow.
to see if there's any correlation between specific management practices and a company's level of entrepreneurial activity.
So it's almost like having 2 lenses to look through.
Yeah.
Stopford and Baden-Fuller give us that close-up view of what makes individual companies tick.
Right.
Whereas Behringer and Bludorn give us that wider perspective, seeing if those behaviors are reflected in broader management practices across a larger sample of companies.
Okay, let's start with Stopford and Baden-Fuller.
Okay.
They outlined 5 key attributes of companies that successfully embrace corporate entrepreneurship.
All right.
The first one is proactiveness.
Okay.
Now, I initially thought this just meant being quick to market,
Right.
but it seems like they're getting at something a little deeper here.
Yeah, you're right. It's not simply about speed.
Yeah.
Stopford and Baden-Fuller define proactiveness as a mindset,
Okay.
a constant willingness to experiment, to take calculated risks, and to actively search for new opportunities, even when things are going relatively well.
So it's more about constantly looking ahead and being ready to adapt.
Yes.
Even if it means like disrupting your own successful pattern.
Exactly. They use Hotpoint in the 1980s as an example.
Okay.
They weren't always the first to market,
Right.
but they were incredibly proactive in reshaping their approach.
Okay.
They weren't afraid to ditch what wasn't working and try something new,
Yeah.
which ultimately helped them become a leader in the UK appliance industry.
So rather than just reacting to the market, they were shaping it.
Yeah.
It's like they were constantly asking, like, what's next?
Yes.
And how can we be a part of it? Or even better, how can we lead it?
That's a great way to put it. They had that entrepreneurial hunger to constantly evolve and stay ahead of the curve.
Okay. The next attribute they highlight is aspirations beyond current capability,
Okay.
which honestly sounds a bit like a recipe for disaster.
It might seem counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But Stopford and Baden-Fuller found that having ambitious goals, even if they seem beyond your current reach, can actually be a powerful driver of innovation.
So instead of being limited by what you think you can do,
Yeah.
you're pushing yourself further.
Exactly. And sometimes that lack of resources or expertise forces you to be more creative.
Oh, okay.
You have to find new ways to do things because the old way simply isn't an option.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Do they give any examples of companies that use this to their advantage?
Absolutely. They talk about Richardson, a cutlery company,
Okay.
and their goal was to create a knife that never needed sharpening.
Wow.
A pretty ambitious goal for a cutlery company at the time.
Right.
And everyone thought they were crazy.
But they pulled it off, right?
They did. They invented the laser knife,
Really?
which not only solved the sharpening problem, but also transformed them into a global leader in the cutlery market.
That's incredible. So maybe having limitations can actually spark creativity in ways we wouldn't expect.
That's what Stopford and Baden-Fuller suggest.
Yeah.
It's about embracing that challenge and using it as fuel for innovation.
Okay, next up is team orientation. Now, I know teamwork is important,
Right.
but I can also see how it could potentially stifle individual creativity,
Yeah.
especially in an entrepreneurial setting.
It's definitely a balancing act.
Right.
You need the collective energy and the diverse perspectives of a team,
Yeah.
but you also need to create space for individual contributions to shine.
So it's not just about working in a team. It's
Right.
about like cultivating a truly collaborative environment.
Precisely. And that's what Stopford and Bader-Fuller observed in these successful companies.
Okay.
They had strong teams at all levels,
Right.
working across traditional departmental boundaries.
Yeah.
But they also emphasized individual recognition within those teams. It wasn't just about celebrating team wins. It was about recognizing and valuing each person's unique contribution.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like, yes, we achieved this together, but let's acknowledge the specific skills and insights that each person brought to the table.
Exactly. And that kind of environment empowers people to take ownership and to be more proactive, which, as we've discussed, is essential for entrepreneurial success.
Speaking of proactive, do they give any examples of companies that really nailed this team orientation aspect?
They do. They highlight Edwards, the vacuum pump manufacturer,
Okay.
and they completely revolutionized their order processing system, and it required input from every single department.
Wow, every single department.
Yeah, which is a testament to their collaborative culture.
That's quite a feat. I imagine that wasn't easy to pull off.
It probably wasn't.
Yeah.
But it shows how powerful it can be.
Right.
When you tap into the diverse knowledge and experience that exists throughout the organization.
All right, moving on to attribute number 4.
Okay.
Capability to resolve dilemmas.
Okay.
Now this sounds like it's getting to the heart of what it means to be entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
It's about facing those tough choices
Right.
and finding creative solutions.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about challenging assumptions and finding ways to do what was previously thought impossible.
Right.
It's about seeing opportunities where others see roadblocks.
Do they provide any examples of companies that were particularly good at this?
They do. Hotpoint, again, serves as a great example here.
Okay.
In the 1980s, they faced a major dilemma with the rising power of retail chains.
Okay.
These chains were squeezing smaller retailers,
Yeah.
putting Hotpoint in a tricky position.
Yeah, I could imagine they probably felt pressure to choose sides, either support the big chains or stay loyal to the smaller retailers.
Most companies did. But Hotpoint didn't see it as an either-or situation.
Right.
They leveraged their expertise in supply chain management to create a solution that actually benefited both the smaller retailers
Wow.
and the large chains.
Now that's what I call resolving a dilemma. It's like they said, we're not going to be boxed in by this seemingly impossible choice.
Right.
We're going to find a third way,
Yes.
a solution that works for everyone.
Exactly. It's about thinking outside the box and reframing the problem entirely.
All right, on to the 5th and final attribute from Stopford and Baden-Fuller. Learning capability.
Learning capability.
I'm guessing this is about more than just gathering information.
Yes.
It's about how you use that information to improve and adapt.
You're spot on. It's about being a learning organization.
Okay.
Constantly seeking feedback, both internally and externally, admitting mistakes, and being willing to change course based on new information.
So it's about being humble enough to acknowledge when you're wrong.
Yes.
And being flexible enough to adjust your approach.
Exactly. They talk about Woolsey, the knitwear company.
Okay.
For years, they ignored feedback from their overseas agents.
Oh.
Then they finally started listening.
Okay.
And they used those insights to adapt their product line to different national demands, which made them far more competitive.
So they went from being inward focused to being truly market driven.
Right.
That's a powerful shift.
Yeah.
But how do they know which feedback to actually implement? It seems like you could get overwhelmed with too much information.
That's where the capability part comes in.
Yeah.
It's about having systems in place to gather, analyze, and prioritize feedback.
Okay.
And then having the courage to act on it.
It's not just about being open to feedback.
Right.
It's about knowing what to do with it.
Precisely. And it's about creating a culture where learning is valued and encouraged at all levels of the organization.
Okay, so we've covered the 5 key attributes that Stopford and Baden-Fuller identify. Proactiveness, aspirations beyond current capability, team orientation, capability to resolve dilemmas, and learning capability.
Right.
Would you say these are like the essential ingredients for building a corporate entrepreneurship engine?
I think that's a great analogy, but like any good recipe, you need to adjust the proportions
Yeah.
and the specific ingredients to fit your particular situation.
Right. So these are the core elements, but how they are combined and applied will vary
Exactly.
from company to company.
Exactly. And Stofford and Baden-Fuller also talk about these attributes evolving over time as companies go through different stages.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about these stages.
Well, they describe three main stages.
Okay.
The first is individual entrepreneurship,
Okay.
where you have individuals within the company who are driving innovation.
Right.
Then you move to organizational renewal, where those individual efforts start to coalesce into a more systematic approach.
Yeah.
And finally, you reach frame-breaking change,
Okay.
where the entire organization is aligned around innovation and is capable of making truly disruptive changes.
So it's a progression from isolated pockets of innovation to a company-wide culture of entrepreneurship.
That's a great way to put it. And what they found is that not all companies make it through these stages smoothly.
Right.
Some get stuck in the early stages, unable to move beyond individual initiatives or embed renewal across the entire organization.
So it's not enough to just have a few bright sparks.
Right.
You need to create a system that supports and sustains that entrepreneurial energy.
Absolutely. And that's where the strategic management practices that Behringer and Bluedorn looked at come into play. They might hold some clues as to how to build that system.
Okay, I'm ready to shift gears and dive into Behringer and Bluedorn's research. They took a different approach, looking at the link between specific management practices and a company's entrepreneurial intensity.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on individual companies, they surveyed a large group of U.S. manufacturing firms to see if there were any patterns in how they managed their operations that correlated with their level of innovation.
So it was like they were searching for the secret sauce, the management practices that separated the innovators from the laggards.
I like that analogy. They were looking for those key ingredients that could help companies cultivate a more entrepreneurial culture.
Well, let's dig in and see what they found.
Okay.
I'm curious to see if their findings connect back to the 5 attributes we've been discussing.
Me too. This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Let's start with their findings on a company's scanning intensity.
Scanning intensity. What exactly does that mean?
It refers to how actively a company searches for information about its external environment.
Okay.
This includes things like tracking competitors, analyzing market trends, staying abreast of new technologies.
So it's not just about passively reading industry reports. It's about actively seeking out information and insights.
Exactly. It's about having your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world. And constantly looking for opportunities, even if they're not immediately obvious.
I can see how that connects back to the idea of proactiveness that we discussed earlier. If you're not actively scanning your environment, you're likely to miss those emerging trends and opportunities.
That's a great point. And Behringer and Bluedorn found a strong correlation between scanning intensity and entrepreneurial intensity.
Okay.
The more a company actively seeks out information, the more likely it is to be innovative.
So scanning isn't just about staying informed. It's a key driver of innovation.
Right.
It's about turning information into action, into new ideas and opportunities. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
What other management practices did they examine?
Well, one that caught my eye was planning flexibility.
Okay.
They found that companies with high entrepreneurial intensity don't treat their plans as set in stone.
Yeah.
They're willing to adapt and adjust course quickly as new information comes in or the landscape shifts.
It's like having a roadmap, but being willing to take detours or even change your destination if you see a better route.
That's a great way to put it. They don't let their plans become straitjackets.
Right.
They embrace change, and they're comfortable operating in a more fluid, dynamic environment.
I can see how that connects to the learning capability attribute we talked about earlier. If you're constantly learning and adapting, you're more likely to be flexible in your planning.
You're absolutely right. It's all about being responsive and agile in a constantly changing world.
Okay, so we've got scanning intensity and planning flexibility.
Yes.
What else did they find?
Well, another interesting finding relates to something they call the locus of planning.
Oh, yeah.
This refers to who's involved in the planning process.
So is it better for just a small group of top executives
Right.
to handle the planning, or is it better to involve a wider range of people?
That's exactly the question they were trying to answer. And
Right.
and what they found is that companies with a deeper locus of planning,
Okay.
meaning they involve a wider range of employees in the process,
Yeah.
tend to be more entrepreneurial.
So it's not just about top-down planning.
Right.
It's about tapping into the collective intelligence of the organization.
Exactly. They found that companies that involve people from different levels and departments in the planning process are more likely to generate creative ideas and solutions.
It's like crowdsourcing your strategy.
Yeah.
You're getting input from people who are closer to the customers, closer to the action.
It's a smart approach because those are the people
Go
who
ahead.
often have the best insights into what's working, what's not,
Right.
and where the opportunities lie.
And it probably helps to create a stronger sense of ownership and buy-in
Yes.
across the organization.
Absolutely. When people feel like they're part of the process,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be engaged and committed to making the plan a success.
This is fascinating stuff. We're starting to see how these broader management practices
Right.
can create the conditions for those 5 attributes of entrepreneurial companies to flourish.
Exactly. It's like we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And there are a few more pieces to go. Let's talk about controls next.
Okay, controls. I'm guessing they're talking about the systems and processes that companies use to monitor and measure their performance, right?
You got it. And they found that the type of control system a company uses
Right.
can have a big impact on its entrepreneurial intensity.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, they looked at 2 main types of control systems.
Okay.
Strategic controls
Okay.
and financial controls.
To be honest, I need a little refresher on the difference between those two.
Right.
Can you remind?
Of course, financial controls are all about the numbers.
Okay.
Things like profitability,
Yeah.
return on investment, and so on.
Yeah.
They're focused on the short-term bottom line.
Okay.
Strategic controls, on the other hand, are more focused on the long-term big picture goals
Right.
of the company.
So strategic controls are less about hitting specific financial targets
Mm-hmm.
and more about making progress toward the company's overall vision.
Exactly. They're focused on things that are important for achieving long-term strategic goals,
Okay.
even if they don't have an immediate impact on the bottom line.
Things like customer satisfaction, innovation,
Yes.
new product development, employee engagement, right?
That's a great list. And what Behringer and Bluedorn found
Yeah.
is that companies that emphasize strategic controls
Okay.
tend to be more entrepreneurial.
So it's not enough to just focus on the financials.
Right.
You also need to have control systems that encourage innovation and risk taking.
Right.
Even if those efforts don't pay off right away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial companies are willing to play the long game.
Right.
They understand that sometimes you need to invest in things that may not generate an immediate return,
Yeah.
but that will position you for success down the road.
It's about balancing short-term performance with long-term vision.
That's a great way to put it. And it's another piece of the puzzle that helps explain why some companies are better at innovating than others.
This is really eye-opening. I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. But before we move on, did they find any connection between financial controls
Yeah.
and entrepreneurial intensity?
Yeah.
Or was it mainly about strategic controls?
Interestingly, they didn't find a statistically significant link
Oh, got it.
between financial controls
Yeah.
and entrepreneurial intensity.
So it's not that financial controls are bad
Right.
or unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't seem to be the driving force behind innovation.
That's right. It seems that while financial controls are important for maintaining stability and managing resources,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily foster that entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, one last question about Behringer and Bluedorn's research before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. Did they look at planning horizon at all?
Yeah.
Did they find that the length of time companies plan for
Right.
has any impact on their level of entrepreneurial activity?
That's a great question. And their findings on that were a bit inconclusive.
Really? So it's not as clear-cut as the other factors we've discussed.
Right. They didn't find a statistically significant
Okay.
relationship between planning horizon and entrepreneurial intensity.
That's interesting. I wonder why that is.
It could be that the ideal planning horizon varies depending on the industry, the company's specific goals, or even the stage of entrepreneurship they're in.
So it might not be about choosing a specific time frame,
right,
like 5 years or 10 years,
yeah,
but about having a mix
yes,
of short-term and long-term plans.
Yeah.
And being adaptable enough to adjust them as needed.
That's a great insight. It seems that regardless of how entrepreneurial a company is, they need a blend of short-term and long-term planning to navigate the complexities of the market.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We've explored the 5 key attributes of entrepreneurial companies.
Yes.
From Stopford and Baden-Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
And we've started to connect those attributes to the broader strategic management practices that Behringer and Bludorn studied. But I'm feeling like we've only just scratched the surface.
We've laid a solid foundation, but there's still so much more to explore.
Right.
We've identified the key ingredients, but now we need to figure out how to put them all together.
Exactly. How can you, the listener, take these insights and apply them to your own work, to your own company?
Right.
That's what we'll be tackling in the next part of our deep dive. So stay tuned. As we've been talking about these attributes and practices, it really strikes me that becoming a more entrepreneurial company isn't just about having, these brilliant ideas.
I completely agree. It's about cultivating a culture, a system that nurtures and encourages innovation, even if it means challenging the status quo.
So it's not just about having a few eureka moments. It's about creating an environment where those moments can actually turn into something, tangible, something impactful.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
It's like creating fertile ground for those ideas to take root and grow into something meaningful.
But wouldn't that look different for every company? I mean, it's not like there's a one-size-fits-all approach to building this, this culture of innovation.
You're absolutely right. What works for a tech startup might not work for a century-old manufacturing company.
Right.
The key is to understand the principles behind these attributes and practices, and then figure out how to apply them in a way that makes sense for your specific context.
So it's like taking those core ingredients that Stopford and Baden-Fuller laid out, and creating a custom recipe that's tailored to your company's unique flavor profile.
I like that analogy. Just like a good chef, you need to experiment, adjust the ingredients, and add your own unique flair to create something truly special.
Okay, so let's say I'm listening to this deep dive and I'm thinking, all right, this all sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But where do I even start? How do I actually implement these ideas in my own company?
That's a great question. And it's one that every company needs to answer for itself. But I think the first step is awareness. Take a step back and honestly assess your current situation. How proactive is your company? Are you setting ambitious goals that push you beyond your comfort zone? How strong is your team orientation? Are people truly collaborating and sharing ideas? Or are they operating in silos? How good are you at resolving dilemmas and learning from your mistakes?
So it's like doing a self-audit.
Yes.
Using those 5 attributes as a guide.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to be brutally honest with yourself.
Right.
The goal isn't to judge or criticize, but to identify areas where you can improve.
But that can feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're starting from scratch. Where do you even begin to tackle, something like that?
Remember, it doesn't have to be a massive overhaul. You don't need to boil the ocean.
Okay.
All you need is to start with one small step. One area where you can make a tangible improvement.
So instead of trying to change everything at once, focus on one specific area
Yeah,
where you can experiment and learn.
exactly. And it could be something as simple as encouraging more open communication and collaboration within your team.
Yep.
Or maybe you focus on improving your environmental scanning efforts, making a conscious effort to stay ahead of the curve in your industry.
And what if you're not in a position to make, company-wide changes?
Right.
What if you're just one person within a larger organization? Can you still make a difference?
Absolutely. You can start by applying these principles to your own work, to your own team. Even small changes can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe your initiative will inspire others to follow suit.
So don't underestimate the power of individual action. It's like that saying, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Exactly. And remember, change takes time.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a sprint. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
It's about building momentum.
Yes.
One step at a time.
That's a great way to put it. And it's also important to remember that building a truly entrepreneurial company isn't just about individual efforts. It's about leadership.
Oh, absolutely. Leaders play a crucial role in creating that culture of innovation.
They set the tone, they communicate the vision, and they empower others to take ownership of the innovation process.
And it's not just about the CEO
Right.
or the top executives, right?
Right.
It's about leadership at all levels of the organization.
Every manager, every team leader has the opportunity to foster that entrepreneurial spirit within their own sphere of influence.
So it's about creating a cascading effect where that innovation mindset flows from the top down and from the bottom up.
That's a great image. It's like a river of innovation, constantly flowing and nourishing the entire organization.
And what I'm realizing as we're talking is that corporate entrepreneurship isn't some mystical quality that some companies just magically have and others don't.
Yeah.
It's not about having a secret formula or a special gene. It's about behavior.
Yes.
It's about choices. It's about creating a system that supports and encourages those behaviors.
I couldn't agree more. It's not about magic. It's about hard work.
Yeah.
Dedication and a willingness to embrace change, even when it feels uncomfortable.
And a bit of a rebellious spirit too, right? I mean, these entrepreneurial companies, they're not afraid to challenge the status quo, to break a few rules along the way.
That's true. There's definitely an element of pushing boundaries, of not being afraid to color outside the lines.
Yeah.
But it's not about recklessness.
Right.
It's about calculated risk taking.
Yeah.
It's about having the courage to try something new, even if it means failing.
So it's about having a healthy balance.
Yes.
Between structure and freedom.
Yeah.
Between planning and spontaneity.
Yeah.
Between following the rules and breaking them.
That's a great way to summarize it. It's about finding that sweet spot where you can harness the power of both.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the how of corporate entrepreneurship, but let's talk about the why.
Okay.
Why should companies even bother going through all this trouble?
Right.
What's the payoff?
I think the answer is pretty clear. In today's rapidly changing world, companies that aren't constantly innovating are falling behind.
Right.
They're getting disrupted by new entrants, new technologies, new business models.
It's adapt or die.
Exactly. Corporate entrepreneurship is no longer a nice to have, it's a necessity. It's the key to survival.
And it's not just about survival, is it?
Right.
It's about growth too.
Absolutely.
Those companies that Stofford and Baden-Fuller studied, the ones that embraced those 5 attributes, they didn't just survive, they thrived.
Right.
They became industry leaders. They redefined the rules of the game.
Yeah.
They created new markets.
That's a great point. Corporate entrepreneurship isn't just about playing defense. It's about playing offense. It's about It's about seizing those opportunities and creating a better future for your company and for the world.
And let's not forget about the impact on employees.
Oh, right.
Working in an entrepreneurial environment can be incredibly empowering and rewarding.
You're right. When employees feel like their ideas are valued and they have the freedom to experiment and take risks,
Right.
it can lead to a more engaged and motivated workforce.
Which in turn can lead to even greater innovation and success.
It's a virtuous cycle.
So it's not just about profits and market share.
Right.
It's about creating a workplace where people feel valued, challenged, and inspired to do their best work.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately what makes corporate entrepreneurship so compelling.
Right.
It's not just about business, it's about people.
Yeah.
It's about creating a better future for everyone.
Okay. I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on. But before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to go back to something you said earlier about building a culture of innovation.
Right.
What does that actually look like in practice? What are some concrete steps that companies can take to create that kind of environment?
Well, I think it starts with leadership.
Yeah.
As we've already discussed.
Right.
Leaders need to be role models for the behaviors they want to see in their employees.
Right.
They need to be willing to experiment, to take risks, to embrace failure as a learning opportunity.
And they need to communicate that vision clearly to the rest of the organization, right?
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just, talk the talk. They need to walk the walk.
Absolutely. And that includes creating structures and systems that support and encourage those behaviors. That might involve things like dedicated innovation teams or departments. Or it might be about simply creating more opportunities for cross-functional collaboration.
So giving people the space and the resources to experiment, to try new things, to fail fast and learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. And it's also about celebrating those successes, no matter how small.
Right.
They all contribute to building that culture of innovation.
So recognizing and rewarding people who are taking initiative, who are pushing boundaries, who are coming up with new ideas, even if those ideas don't always work out.
Exactly. It's about creating a positive feedback loop that encourages people to keep trying to keep innovating.
I'm remembering a story from one of the case studies in the Stopford and Baden-Fuller paper. It was about Edwards, the vacuum pump manufacturer.
Right.
Apparently, they had this policy where if you came up with an innovative idea that failed, you were actually rewarded for it.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So they weren't punishing failure.
Right.
They were encouraging it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, they weren't rewarding reckless or careless mistakes.
Right.
But they recognize that failure is often a byproduct of trying something new and innovative.
Yeah.
And they wanted to encourage that kind of risk-taking behavior.
That's a great example of how companies can shift their culture to be more supportive of innovation. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about learning from it.
And it probably created an environment where people were more likely to share their ideas.
Yes.
Because they knew they wouldn't be penalized for taking a chance.
Absolutely. That psychological safety is essential for fostering creativity and innovation. If people are afraid to fail, they're not going to try anything new.
So it sounds like building a culture of innovation is about creating a safe space for experimentation, for collaboration, and for learning.
Yeah.
It's about empowering employees, rewarding risk-taking, and celebrating both successes and failures.
That's a great summary. And it's about recognizing that innovation is an ongoing process.
Right.
Not a one-time event. It's a journey, not a destination.
It's about constantly pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. Constantly
seeking new and better ways of doing things.
Exactly. And that's how you stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
In today's rapidly changing world.
Okay, I think we've laid a solid foundation here.
Mm.
We've explored the key attributes of entrepreneurial companies.
Yes.
Connected those attributes to broader strategic management practices.
Right.
And talk about what it takes to create a culture of innovation.
We've given our listeners a roadmap, so to speak.
Now it's up to them to take the wheel and chart their own course.
And to remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Wise words. But before we send our listeners off on their innovation adventures,
Yeah.
I think we need to tackle one final
Okay.
and perhaps most important question.
Right.
How do we measure success?
Yeah.
How do we know if all of this effort is actually paying off?
That's a great question, and it's one that each company needs to answer for itself. There's no one size fits all metric for measuring innovation success.
Because success can mean different things to different organizations, right?
Absolutely. For some companies, it might be about developing a groundbreaking new product or service.
Yeah.
For others, it might be about improving efficiency
Right.
or reducing costs.
Yeah.
And for others, it might be about creating a more engaged and motivated workforce.
So
Yeah.
so there's no single magic entrepreneurship.
Precisely. It's about identifying what's most important
Right.
for your particular organization.
Yeah.
And then tracking your progress towards those goals.
But whatever your definition of success, I think it's safe to say that corporate entrepreneurship is a critical ingredient.
I couldn't agree more. It's the fuel that drives innovation and growth. And in today's world, that's what separates the winners from the also-rans.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. We've talked about the practical steps companies can take to foster innovation, and we've explored the importance of leadership and culture
Right.
in creating a fertile environment for those seeds of innovation
Yes.
to take root.
Absolutely.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle that we haven't touched on yet,
Okay.
and it's a big one.
I'm intrigued. What's that?
Sustainability.
Oh, okay.
We've talked a lot about growth and innovation.
Right.
But what about the long-term impact of those efforts
Right.
on the environment and on society as a whole?
You're right. That's an essential part of the conversation,
Look.
and it's one that's becoming increasingly important
Yeah.
as we grapple with the challenges of climate change and social inequality.
So how do we ensure that corporate entrepreneurship isn't just about driving profits,
Right.
but also about creating a more sustainable
Mm-hmm.
and equitable future?
That's the $1 million question, and it's one that we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
So stay tuned for some thought-provoking insights
Right.
and inspiring examples of companies that are leading the way in sustainable innovation.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring these fascinating papers on corporate entrepreneurship.
We certainly have. From proactiveness to learning capability, we've uncovered some really powerful attributes and practices that can help companies become more innovative and adaptable.
And we've also talked about the importance of creating a culture of innovation,
Yes.
one that empowers employees, encourages risk-taking, and celebrates both successes and failures.
Absolutely. But as we wrap up our deep dive, I think it's crucial to shift our focus to a topic that's becoming increasingly important in the business world.
Right.
Sustainability.
Okay.
How can companies ensure that their entrepreneurial efforts aren't just about driving, short-term profits,
Right.
but are also contributing to a more sustainable and equitable future?
You're right. It's no longer enough for companies to simply be innovative.
Right.
They need to be innovative in a way that benefits both people and the planet.
Exactly. And that's where sustainable innovation comes in.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to create value for your business while also minimizing your environmental impact and maximizing your positive social impact.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Yes.
Where profitability, environmental responsibility, and social equity all intersect.
That's a great way to put it. It's about recognizing that that these three elements are not mutually exclusive. They can actually reinforce each other.
Okay.
When companies prioritize sustainability, they often find that it leads to new opportunities for innovation, for efficiency, and even cost savings.
And it can also enhance their reputation and brand image.
Yeah.
Attracting customers and investors who are increasingly looking for companies that are aligned with their values.
Absolutely. Consumers are becoming more discerning.
Right.
And are increasingly voting with their wallets, choosing products and services from companies that are demonstrably committed to sustainability.
It seems like there's a real business case to be made for sustainable innovation.
Yes.
But what does that actually look like in practice? Can you give us some concrete examples of companies that are doing this well?
Certainly. One company that comes to mind is Patagonia.
Okay.
The outdoor clothing and gear company.
Right.
They've been a leader in sustainable business practices for decades.
Okay.
Using recycled materials in their products, supporting fair labor practices throughout their supply chain, and even encouraging their customers to repair their clothes rather than buying new ones.
I love that. It's like they're challenging the traditional consumerism model,
right?
And saying, we don't just want to sell you stuff. We want to help you live a more sustainable lifestyle.
Exactly. And it's working for them.
Yeah.
They've built a loyal customer base that shares their values.
Right.
And they've become a model for other companies looking to integrate sustainability into their business model.
That's inspiring. Do you have any other examples? I'm curious to see how different companies are approaching this challenge.
Of course. Another great example is Unilever.
Cool.
the consumer goods giant.
Right.
They've set ambitious sustainability goals, including reducing their environmental footprint, promoting sustainable sourcing, and improving the health and well-being of their customers and employees.
Wow, those are some big goals. But it sounds like they're making progress, right?
They are. They've been recognized for their efforts by organizations like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index and CDP, a global environmental disclosure platform.
Yep.
And they've found that their sustainability initiatives are not only good for the planet, but are also good for business,
right,
driving growth and innovation.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
It's not just about, doing the right thing. It's also about doing the smart thing for your business.
Exactly. And I think more and more companies are starting to realize that we're seeing a growing trend of businesses integrating sustainability into their core strategy. And it's exciting to see.
It feels like there's a real shift happening in the business world.
Yeah.
A recognition that we need to find a more sustainable and equitable way of doing business.
I agree. And it's being driven by a number of factors, including consumer demand, investor pressure, and even government regulations.
Like all the stars are aligning to push businesses in this direction.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it's creating a tremendous opportunity for companies that are willing to embrace this change.
So what advice would you give to companies that are just starting to think about sustainability? Where should they begin?
That's a great question. I think the first step is to simply start the conversation.
Okay.
Talk to your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your investors. Find out what their concerns and priorities are, and then start exploring ways to integrate sustainability into your business operations.
So don't try to boil the ocean all at once.
Yeah.
Just start with one small step and go from there.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment and learn as you go.
Right.
There's no one size fits all approach to sustainability. So it's important to find what works best for your company and your industry.
And to be patient. These kinds of changes take time and effort.
Yes.
But the payoff can be enormous.
Absolutely. When companies embrace sustainable innovation, they're not just creating a better future for themselves. They're creating a better future for everyone.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the key attributes of entrepreneurial companies to the importance of building a culture of innovation, and finally to the growing imperative for businesses to embrace sustainability.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope it's inspired our listeners to think differently about how they approach innovation in their own work and in their own companies.
Me too. Remember, innovation is a powerful force, and when we harness it for good, we can create a world that's not only more prosperous, but also more sustainable and equitable for all.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.